A quick note before I start this video. Black Powder and Brimstone is what we're going to be looking at today, and it's one I wanted to be a little bit careful of. It is set in the Morkborg universe, which is known for being brutal and sometimes even grotesque, or often even grotesque. But this one also covers a particularly sensitive topic, which is the early days of monotheism, so it has to do with religious persecution and conflict. With that said, keep in mind this is based in a fictionalized universe, and if you're comfortable with that, feel free to continue watching. Welcome to Tabletop Gaming Guild. Tabletop Gaming Guild is all about the experiences and memories that playing tabletop games with friends and families can create. Today we're giving you an overview of Black Powder and Brimstone, designed by Benjamin Torpet, and this is an RPG using the Morkborg mechanics. Now, we're not going to go through all the rules, we're just going to give you a brief overview and give you a sense of whether this is something you're interested in picking up. And I would also, once again, like to thank Free League. They've been a great friend to the channel. They've provided a lot of stuff for us to review, and I've enjoyed a lot of the stuff that they make. I love the Morkborg game, and I love a lot of the games in the Morkborg series. Am I going to love this one? Let's find out. So, if you look at the quick rules, it is basically Morkborg. Like Morkborg, it's a single-page rule set that the players need. That's really all the players need to be able to start the game. There's a little bit more to it that the DM will have to know, but it is nice, simple, and sleek. So let's look at the things that are the same. You got your basic stats of agility, presence, strength, and toughness, and you're going to be rolling a d20 and adding in whichever stat applies, and comparing that to whatever the difficulty rating of the task you're trying to do. Now, combat is going to be, initiative is going to be based on agility, and you're going to be rolling based on difficulties and ability type based on what type of combat, if you're close, long, or if it's magic, or whether you're defending. And the cool thing about the system is it's always the players rolling. That gives the DM a chance to focus on the storytelling of the combat. They don't have to roll the dice and try to interpret that. It's like the characters roll, then the DM's just there to tell them what the result of that roll is. Pretty standard for Morkborg. You double damage for a crit, or if you crit on defense, you get an extra attack, like a reaction attack. Bad things happen if you get a natural 1. Armor just modifies your damage. If you hit 0 HP, you're not necessarily dead. You have to roll to see the result, and it's going to have, if you survive, it's going to have permanent effects in most cases. And Devil's Luck is, I think, a cool addition. There's been a couple other games that had something similar, but this wasn't a thing I don't believe in based Morkborg. And I really like this. This gives you a chance to give something tangible to your players. You can give them like little chits. You get three of these Devil's Luck a day that they can spend to either modify a difficulty of a roll, or they can use it for these dark powers that can do really powerful things like auto crit or cancel out a crit against you. But they do come at a cost. There's a chance of having a mutation, like a negative effect, that's going to be a permanent, more generally a permanent effect on that character. So high risk reward on that dark power. And spells are similar in that it's like, yes, spells are really powerful and they can have a lot of game-changing impacts on your what you're doing, but there is always a chance they fail and you have disastrous outcomes. Now, there's another thing I loved about Morkborg is carried over here is it definitely focuses on, you know, randomizing your character. I love that you can just bring a player in, have them roll for their character creation, and just start right away. And there's often enough in that roll to tell you who your character is. This is a little not quite as robust, but it's still, there's a fair amount there. So you're going to roll your stats, roll your health. You may pick a character archetype, pick your weapons, buy your gears, and, you know, pretty standard character creation. If you want to use an archetype, each archetype's going to have, you know, the basics for the archetype, and then like a subclass essentially that you can choose from. There's a couple different archetypes. I don't want to go through all of them. They don't seem very detailed, but honestly, I don't feel like you need a lot of detail to have a good story. You leave a lot of that up to the player and the DM to create that story. The game also gives you these optional character traits. These are basically like prompts to help you, you know, if you need help like fleshing out your character, making it a little more detailed. So you're going to need a variety of dice, same dice you would need for D&D or many RPGs. But it's going to be primarily D20s for most non-combat rolls, and the other dice is going to be depend on your character class and what you're rolling for. Position and impact I found pretty interesting. This is basically a way for the DM to communicate to the players how much risk they're looking at without giving away too much information. Basically, you could say something like, oh, this situation looks pretty dire, and that signals to them, well, even if you roll really well, there's a good chance this is not going to be a great outcome. And negotiations, you have a similar signposting, you know, what kind of results you can expect, and you can modify that by like bribing or flattery, but you have to be aware of like who you're talking to and what might be the best way to modify the situation, you know, based on you know, how that character might react to such action. So combat is kept very simple. You're gonna determine initiative based on basically who acts first. So roleplay wise, it's like, okay, well, the player declared the attack, so they take first initiative. All players go, and then the enemies go. Then you're gonna roll just to see within that, like within the player group, who goes first among those players. In the round, you get attack and a move, and a free action. Free action would be like picking up a small object or shouting something out. And your attack is going to be based on your distance from the enemy. So if you're further distance, you're going to have to use presence to attack with either ranged abilities or magic. And then it talks about movement, and it's pretty standard. It's like how movement works in it. You know, you can do reckless attacks to potentially double your damage, but at a cost to your accuracy. Things like that, how armor works. It just reduces damage, does not negate it. Then we get into advanced combat rules that cover stealth, fire, morale, all a variety of things, including mounted combat and a chase mechanic. While I found the chase mechanic fairly interesting, I am a little concerned because part of the thing I love about this system is the simplicity that combat has, keeping it fast and fun and keeping it moving. Anytime you add a little bit more, that's going to slow it down. A little bit more that players need to know. So if you're playing with all these advanced combat rules, yeah, they're going to need that one-page sheet, but they're also going to need this these 2 sheets. So now you're, instead of having 1 page to refer to, you have 3. Not a huge deal, but it is something. Nat 20. Now this is I really like. So this is really, I think, more of a tool for the GM. And if they roll a nat 20 or a nat 1, somebody can roll and use that to determine how they end up describing what happens. Now leveling up has changed. In Morkborg, there was a chance it would be negative, but in this version, it is always going to be a positive thing. It's often very incremental. Well, chances are, because this tends to be a brutal universe, a lot of times characters won't make it to the point of leveling up. And when they level up, they can get extra features. So this is, I think, where most of the power is going to come from. They're limited to 3 if they survive long enough to pick up 3 feats, because you only get a feat every other level. It also gives you rules for creating an org company. So it's your band can make themselves official. It makes it, story-wise, could make it easier to get jobs. People know who you are, know where to reach out to get you. It gives you an opportunity to hire help, and it gives you rules for how those mercenaries affect combat. Just skim through these various spells you can get. I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm just going to skim through this. Travel and various things you can counter. The story feels very much, early monotheism. The Crusades, religious inquisition, witchcraft, and trying to put down opposing religions. So there's some inherent brutality to this, and there's definitely a bleak nature to it. It can be a sensitive topic for people who don't like to talk about religion, but if you're comfortable enough with that and acknowledge that this is meant to be fictional, meant to be fun, just again, be aware of the group you're playing with and making sure they're okay with this topic. Okay, GM guide. Obviously, I don't want to show too much of this because this is going to contain, the truth, what's really happening behind the scenes. It's also going to give you, the DM, a lot of tips and tricks to keep the story interesting, how to build interesting dungeons and NPCs, and all those types of tips and tricks. For example, it's okay, how to keep fights interesting. And these aren't things to use in every combat. It's I think what's going to make it interesting is using a different tip each time. It's okay, yeah, if every time you combat as an ambush, it's not going to be interesting. But if you do an ambush for one combat, and maybe at another time you just run into an obstacle and have to fight around a pit or something that's in your way, or fragile items that you're trying to protect, that could be quite interesting. I don't want to show you the loot page, but that definitely takes a hint from Morkborg, and that it has brief description of items you can pick up that can almost lead to a story in their own right. If you fail badly at a spell, there is a table below that'll have potential negative effects. So obviously you can kind of create your own as you want, but this is a basic guide. So yeah, something to bear in mind anytime you're casting spells is, things can go really bad if they fail badly enough. And of course you have a variety of enemies. I don't want to spoil it. Most of these enemies are humanoids, and you got some spectral enemies. Given the setting, it does seem to limit the types of enemies a little bit. You don't have anything too outrageous in this core book. But I don't want to go through and spoil a bunch of enemies. Finally, there is a pre-built story or campaign that you can go through. Looks like it's an interesting story. I, again, don't want to spoil that. If you find the game too easy, which it seems unlikely, you can add a little more difficulty through trauma and madness. So my initial thoughts of this is it seems like an interesting theme. Mechanically, it seems well written, but not nearly as evocative in the way it's written as Morkborg. Is very matter of fact. So when I was reading through this, it wasn't like stories were just popping to my head. It felt like I would have to do a little bit more work to actually grow a story out of this. But the potential is definitely there. It does seem good. I think the main audience for this is going to be, I think, largely history buffs. People that like that, want to tell a story in that period of history, of religious strife, but want it, encapsulated in a safe, fictionalized universe. So if you're interested in that, in this theme at all, this is something you might want to check out.